beginning today and for the next 4 days, we will hear from chapter 3 of the Gospel of John. Chapter 3 of the Gospel of John is the dialogue between Jesus and Nicodemus. Nicodemus, we are told right at the beginning of the text, was a leading person in his community at the time of Jesus. He recognizes that there is something special about Jesus. He recognizes the uniqueness of Jesus, but because he is afraid of being seen by others, he comes to Jesus at night. Jesus is the antithesis of night and darkness. Jesus is the light. So even though Nicodemus comes at night, what John is saying is that he comes to the true light. He begins by approving Jesus. He has seen what Jesus has done. He has heard what Jesus has said. And he is quite convinced that because of the words of Jesus and because of Jesus' deeds, that Jesus is indeed coming from God. Jesus hears this approval and Jesus responds to Nicodemus to take him now to a higher level. Nicodemus is impressed with Jesus. Nicodemus is inspired by Jesus, but only because of the externals that he has heard and seen. Jesus now wants to take Nicodemus to the level of the heart. And that is why after he hears what Nicodemus says, he invites Nicodemus to be born anothen. This word anothen has a double meaning. One meaning, the surface level meaning, the base level meaning is to be born again. Anothen means to be born again. Another meaning of anothen is to be born from above. Because Nicodemus is focusing only on the externals of Jesus, because he is focusing only on the words and the actions of Jesus and not on the heart of Jesus and his own heart, he understands the surface level meaning. How can, Nicodemus asks, a man or a woman be born again? This how can already puts a limit. This how can already puts a stop. This how can already sets what Nicodemus will understand. He has said to Jesus that he cannot go beyond how can. And Jesus hears the question and invites him by telling him that the word anothen has not to be interpreted as born again, but born from above. And then Jesus goes on to explain what it means to be born from above when he says to be born not only from the flesh, but to be born in spirit and in truth. But because Nicodemus has set a limit, but because Nicodemus refuses to go beyond, but because Nicodemus continues with his how can, he cannot really fathom what Jesus is saying. And Jesus then explains even further that he has to be born of the Spirit, because the Spirit which Jesus gives and the Spirit which God gives is the Spirit of life. This Spirit is present. The Spirit is free. The Spirit blows where it will. The Spirit cannot be seen. The Spirit can only be experienced. It is only those who are born of the Spirit who can see and enter into the heart of Jesus. If we continue to look at Jesus merely as an eloquent speaker, merely as a miracle worker, we stay on the level of anothen as being born again. However, if we stop our how can, and if we go beyond to look at our Lord as the risen Christ, to look at our Lord as the one who communicates the Spirit, to look at our Lord as the one who invites us to be born not only of water, but also of the Spirit, and therefore to focus on the heart, then we can see Him as He is. Will you focus only on the words and the actions of Jesus? Or will you focus on His being?